I believe we're live. Are we live, guys? And we got some friends who are here waiting for us.
I'm
Let's see.
alive, Eric.
What's that?
I'm alive.
You're live. You know what I should have asked you before we hit the live button? Am I saying your last name right? Ishac.
Ishac, correct. Very phonetic.
Thank you. Before we hit the live button, yeah. Our friend Squirrel Sniper is here. Ellie is here. The very first thing I want to ask you is, are there still, because we heard New York City in the background, are there still 50 places to find peace and quiet in New York City?
Yeah, I think there are probably more, but I'll tell you about guidebooks. I have it over there. They don't work anymore. The reason is you can pick up this phone that I'm talking to you on, put in best places to find peace and quiet in New York, and it comes up in 5 seconds. And once you sell a book, it takes a year for it to come out. So that book went to 6 editions. It sold
Okay.
200,000 copies because people needed it. But it doesn't. Guidebooks aren't really what publishers are looking for anymore.
Do you have a favorite place? Your favorite quietest place?
My favorite quietest place is probably a place called the Earth Room in Soho, and it's a Walter Demarius sculpture that is about 3 foot of soil in a Soho loft. It's quite exceptional. It's very quiet, and it's a sculpture. There is a curator there who comes and plucks the mushrooms every 3 weeks, I think he said, because there are a lot of mushroom spores in the air, which I had no idea about. But the one I like to say, just because it feels so up to me right now, is the strawberry fields up in Central Park,
Oh,
obviously dedicated to John Lennon. And the Imagine Mosaic is very special to me. And I think that song is something we should all be singing every day right now. So that's a special place to me. But there are places all over the city. I actually did an app that again is defunct now called Tranquilicity, CITY, and it was an app where wherever you were standing in New York City, you could punch in your location and it would show you the closest quiet place. It was quite kind of cool, so that was fun.
well, nice. Let me give you an introduction. Uh, Guys, this is Allan Ishac, and he is a best-selling author. He is a student teacher of A Course in Miracles for since 1986, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
So not too far from 40 years of practicing.
Correct. Actually, I started studying in the fall of '85, but it really got going. It was a class at someplace called the Open Center. It had a lot of alternative classes back then with a woman named Diane Gusick who still teaches. So that was very special. And she turned me on to Ken Wapnick, who I hope your listeners know was up in Roscoe, New York at the time. So I started visiting him and we became friendly, and it was awesome.
I think a lot of people will be familiar with the name of Ken Wapnick because I've been mentioning him quite a bit because I've been having imaginary conversations with Kenneth Wapnick. He shows up in my imagination at what I would consider the most inopportune times, but he believes
That would
the
be
time when I most need it. Um,
I love that. Thank you for sharing that with me.
right now, his message has been consistently that this is a course in cause and not effect. And you keep bringing me effects, and I'll keep telling you as often as you need to hear it that you can rearrange effects all you want. But if you want peace of mind, you got to go to the cause.
Yeah, that's all there is. Everything is, there's nothing out there. The line from the course is you're looking at an outside picture of an inward condition, which means that you know, it came to two Freudian psychologists in the 60s for a good reason. The Freudian psychology was really up right then, back then. And, Freud was famous for two things: penis envy and projection makes perception. And everybody wants to talk about the first and no one wants to talk about the second. Then you have to take responsibility for your life. I like projection makes it perception, no exception, no exception. That is radical. And Ken was the most radical teacher, in my opinion. He was a fundamentalist. He did not deviate from the message of the course, and it's your cause and effect language exactly. And
Um,
he also said something Eric, that is super important. That the course is not about is not a course in love. It is a course in removing the blocks to love's presence. Very different. And if you are serious about it, you have to look at your darkest stuff, which is very hard for people to do. It can be very scary for people to do, but it must be done. I tell a story about Pandora's box. I think is really very relevant here. If it's okay to share that.
Sure.
Uh, Pandora's box, if you read the allegory, was actually an urn. Um, the Everybody knows if you ask them. So what's the Pandora's box story? And what they tell you is don't open the box because when Pandora did, all the evil came out, all the bats, all the darkness, and that's going to overwhelm you. Don't open the bat box. When you read the full allegory, and I didn't until I was writing my novel, which we'll talk about later. At the bottom of the is hope. That's at the bottom of the box. And that's what the course is about. It's our only hope that you have to bring up all the darkness. Ken would say that if you had one speck of hatred or kindness to anyone or anything, that speck would stay on your eye with everything you looked at all the time. So it's removing that speck, and that takes a lot of excavation before you can see rightly, which would be aligned with spirit and through the eyes of love. So it's very profound difference, but crucial if you're serious about becoming a course student.
So 40 years in,
Yeah,
how's that going?
I love. I have to tell you, I love that question because I'm kind of a heady guy. I'm a writer. I was in advertising as a writer, and when I picked up the courses, so many people said back in '86, I did not understand the word, but I'd been a searcher for a while already, like 15 years already then, and I knew the minute I opened this blue book that it was actually it was 3 books at the time, but the minute I opened it, I knew this was what I'd been looking for. I knew it, but it took me honestly about 35 of those 40 years to understand what it said. I like a woman named Corrine Walson, and as great teachers, they say that the course needs to go from the head to the heart, from the head to a feeling place, the felt sense. And that didn't happen to me until a few years ago when I had a dark night of the soul experience, kind of a classic experience. The course even talks about that. You don't have to go through it, but many serious students do because that's unselfing where you lose all identity markers. So, it's usually job, career, name, relationships, a lot of those things dissolve. You and I have talked about that before, Eric. So that is what happened to me. I thought my life was over. I thought it was like exit stage left. And now I call it my brutal blessing because it was brutal. And I hope I don't have to go through that stage again. But it's a blessing now. My life completely changed after that. And it was kind of like being shot out of a miraculous cannon. So yeah, so my 40-year journey. I've talked about this. Kavanaugh talks about it as well, where I had that experience, and I I I awoke then. It was just initial awakening, like one eye opened, and now the real work begins. I'm 69 years old, and I say this, and people go, "Oh, yeah, it's wishful thinking." I honestly feel like my life just started. And what's happening in my life really feels like, oh, this is what I came to do. This book, talking about the Mystic and the Muse, is why I came. And I knew since I'm 18 that I'm going to write that or something like that. And I finished it at age 67 or something like that. But it is the book I came to write, and it's going to be a trilogy. And it better not take me 10 years next two, or I'll be 90. So that's not a good idea.
It probably took you a bit um, to know that you were going to write it. And now that you know, it's going to flow pretty quickly instead of taking another 10 years.
Well, I think that I knew I was going to write it at age 18, more or less, because I decided in another lifetime that I was going to have to do that, probably back then it was oral, the stories telling, and now it's different. But Tam Morgan, who's the president of Foundation for Inner Peace, the publisher of the course, said something really interesting to me. I was talking on a podcast about I 10 years to write the next two, and she said, "Close your eyes, right?" And it was very, because after I came through the Dark Knight place, finished the book in 3 months after 10 years, there was a presence right here in my. This is where I write, by the way, and there was a presence right here, and it was very interesting. I wasn't scared, but I'd be writing and I'd hear not that word, kind of like your conversations with Ken. Actually, Ken was one of my editors from the other side, and it was like not that word, and I'd be like, oh, or not that idea, or you don't quite have that right. And it was stunning but wonderful. So she said, close your eyes and see if you can just tell the story with closed eyes. What was fascinating, I've been using that technique with other things, and I'm typing faster, and not that quantity matters, but better, which is super weird. I'll be typing, I'm thinking, oh my God, that's not going to make any sense at all. And then I look, and no errors, almost none. So that's how I'm going to try to write the next two. The mystic in my novel is one of my guides, and it's his book. So I suppose it'll help.
Can you can tell everyone a bit about your book?
Yeah, so this is the book. It's called The Mystic in the Mews. The reason that's a muse, by the way, a lot of people think the word is M-U-S-E. It's M-E-W-S. And honestly, I didn't know it until I wrote it. But Carol Howe, who wrote Bill Thetford's biography, I can talk about her. She asked, what does muse mean? And I'm like, really? And then I found out that it's a very common word in England. It's a lane that's usually cobblestone, very old. It's where the carriage houses for the horses, for the homes that were behind the carriage. And there is a mews about blocks from my house that looks just like that. It's called the Washington Mews. I live in Greenwich Village. And I called it that because the mystic shows up after 2,600 years in that muse to talk to the protagonist, who's a young man who's searching for what the meaning of life is, what its purpose is. And so that's where the book starts, and that's why it's called Mystic in the Muse. The trilogy had the title always start with mystic and then something else. But he returns after 2,600 years to basically um, wake up the world to the situation that it's in. Helen had the same message from Jesus when he was giving her the book. She said, "Why?" Now, she first said, "Why me?" and classically said, "Because I knew you'd do it." Very practical answer. But he also said, because evolution has stumbled, and the world, of course, time and space illusion matters, but it doesn't really matter on other non-dualistic level. But it is a good place to practice our lessons and heal. It'd be kind of a bad idea to destroy it. And so the mystic Jesus tells Helen that there is a cosmic speed underway. That was in 1965. That is nothing. That is a blink, and everything is happening right now anyway. So that 60 years is nothing. So we are in the middle of that right now, and making the kind of break from fear to love feel just like it right now in the world.
Do you think things have, in the past couple years, accelerated a bit even faster, a little bit more?
Well, probably so, Eric, but because people are ready, because the world is ready, not because, I mean, I think, yes, I would say that's correct. I would also say that there are more people willing to do what's needed. I'll tell you a very, very wild story, and I have no political leaning here, okay? I don't care what people believe, because it doesn't matter anyway. But I am writing the biography of Carol Howe. This is Carol's book, Never Forget to Laugh, Bill Thetford's biography. She was very good friends with him. I love that this man, at the end of his life, understood everything. He was an awakened being. And the last words that he gave to Carol, she kept asking, "What's the title of this book? What's the title of this book?" She speaks to him all the time. He said, "Wait till the last page." And when they got to the last page, it was never forget to laugh. Now, somebody who has arrived, he has 4 words left to tell the world: never forget to laugh. And that's hard to do right now, but that is the message. So, one story I'll tell you that I find fascinating was that in 1976, she was a transcendental meditator, and she went to a conference in Ohio with some 5 other people, all very educated scientists, mostly physicists. And one of it wasn't the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, but one of his lieutenants, his top people, said. Now this was in 1976, Eric. One of his lieutenants said, the low point in America will come when an orange-haired man is elected president. Okay, that was 50 years ago. And she said, I never forgot it because it was so incongruous and weird. Like, what did that even mean? Now, it's very important to hold on to the idea that it doesn't mean that we're headed towards an apocalypse. The low point, lowest point, it means that's where the phoenix from the ashes, from what we're looking at. He, if I don't care again about the politics of it, but this is the perfect setup for the promise of this healing path and many other healing paths. The course says itself, it's not the only path, but
Right.
you have the exact, I don't care where you're coming from in terms of your connection to spirit and your guides and your ancestors. We're all moving, and now quickly a lot of people are talking about the great turning, which I love as an expression, and a lot of people are speaking about the quickening, and that is that is Jesus' words, the cosmic speed up. And it's just such, I mean, people think, what are you, nuts? But what a great time alive. Oh my goodness. And to do this work and to bring, Ken used to say, love everyone and love everything, and even your toaster. And you can get what he's talking about, that awareness and marination in love needs to extend to everything. I must admit, I still kill mosquitoes. I'm not proud of it, but so that's where I fall short.
I have an accord with mosquitoes. I've made a deal that they don't bother me.
Tell
I
me,
will even give them. I will even let them give a little taste, as long as it's just a little taste, and then they're on their way, and I won't bother them.
please
It's
help.
funny
Please help me
you
bother
mentioned
that. Yeah.
the title. I have Carol's book in the next room, and uh, my imaginary dialogue with Ken lately. He has been saying that every cause is because of, or every effect has been because we forgot to laugh at that tiny mad idea. And that all we have to do is remember to laugh. Remember to laugh, that we're not really separate, that we're not really ego, that we're not really apart from God, and that it's a it's a joke that we are,
Yeah.
although we take it very seriously, and we should, as you mentioned, in this world. But in the mind, we don't take it seriously, and we remember to laugh.
Yeah, I like to say that this is a cartoon we're looking at. So those are pretty funny. And if you know the Wile E. Coyote Roadrunner cartoon, the coyote's always getting smashed with the safe or blowing himself up, but he returns in the next scene. He's intact, and that's kind of the truth of this situation. But the whole idea of reincarnation, I talk about it. The mystic talks about it in the novel. Like, why do we want to keep going around with this merry-go-round? We're so enamored of life. Oh, good, we get to come back and what? Do it again? I I kind of like the idea that this might be my, my last turn. Uh, yeah, possible. The course, this is a place created by the ego, so it is not reality, but we can have a happy dream here, which is a nice idea, which is not necessarily peace on earth, but peace within my mind.
Um, we're talking about the happier dream, and we're talking about, you mentioned politics without really getting political. Um, is there a place? What are we supposed to, as students of the course, what are we supposed to do in the world, uh, socially, politically? And I know that's a mixed feeling for some, that, uh, our job, our role isn't to change the world. It's not to mess with the effects, It's to change how we see the world. It's good a cause. But where does that leave us as far as addressing effects?
Honestly, you could not ask a better question. So there's a lesson in the workbook. I need do nothing. But Ken makes the point. It doesn't mean you sit on your hands. It doesn't mean you go necessarily to a cave and meditate. It's I need do nothing by myself. And that is the whole idea of forgiveness. I wrote an article in Miracles Magazine this month. But it's whole. I had trouble with the forgiveness idea because for me it was always pardoning somebody for a sin they did commit, a crime they did commit. And then I was able to adjust after my experience a few years ago and realize, okay, for me, forgiveness can be, oh, this negative thought is for giving over to spirit, for giving over. So, the answer to your question, I live in Greenwich Village, as you know, and I live between Union Square Park and Washington Square Park, if anybody knows those parks. It's called Protest Alley because protests often start in Union Square and they end up in Washington Square Park, which I'm looking at straight ahead. I was somebody who jumped on every protest, and I was doing the right thing. I was righteous, and my causes were the good causes, which is playing God. Of course, makes that very clear. I can judge nothing. I have no idea what it means, and so now in my life, I try to ask about every single thing. So I need do nothing unless I'm guided to do something. And it might be to go and march, but not necessarily about the cause. It might be about the person who I'm standing next to as we're marching. That might be why I'm there. I don't need to know, but I need to listen and follow. Listen and follow. My book, Mystic says, pay attention, stay alert, be aware, because the clues are everywhere. Walt Whitman, amazing quote, which is in my book. The sidewalks are littered with postcards from God. I arrogantly finished that quote in my book, The Mystic does, but no one is picking them up and looking at them. That is what we have to do. That's where, Eric, you and I love the whole idea of synchronicity and coincidence and deja vu. Not an accident, clues. And it's so much fun when we're paying attention and looking for them and then following them. It's a treasure. And who doesn't love a treasure hunt? You can be 5 or 95. And if I say, Eric, you want to go on a treasure hunt? You're not going to say no. You're going to say yes. Where do we start? Which I love because God is fun.
I've been practicing primordial sound meditation, which is derivative of transcendental meditation. It was brought to the forefront by Deepak Chopra, and he calls it synchrodestiny, finding those synchronicities that lead to your destiny. And it's a good thing we both wanted to talk about synchronicities. How have synchronicities guided your life? How have they guided your practice of the course as well?
So Deepak Chopra lives on 11th Street, by the way. So he's in the neighborhood a lot. Well, first of all, they're just great fun. But obviously, the idea of synchronicity was kind of created by Carl Jung, who called synchronicities uh, a sign that you're aligned with the universe or you're in sync with the cosmos, which is a nice idea. But again, in the novel, the myth says they are more than that. They are breadcrumbs from the beyond or however you want to relate to it, and they can take us where we want to go. That's what makes them so much fun. And when you start to notice synchronicities, and that is spoken about in the novel, when you start to notice, and I guarantee this is going to happen, you will start to notice more. They'll seem to happen more. They were always happening. The postcards were always on the sidewalk. But once you decide to follow them, something very delightful happens. I was going to say miraculous, and that could be as well. But they're great fun. I actually am going to be launching, Eric, in about probably right after the first of the year. Uh, so it's all about these kinds of incredible experiences. It's called Stories That Defy All Rational Explanation. they're so much fun. They're so interesting. It's going to be a YouTube channel, as you have, and they're going to be short episodes with guests. But the weird and wonderful thing is that I had someone doing a logo for Stories That Defy All Rational Explanation, kind of a mouthful. And when he did the logo, I was looking at the first letters of that Stories That Defy, and it comes out to Saint Dare. I just think that's amazing because these stories are very challenging for many people to tell because they think they're going to be called crazy. It's like near death experience. Now everybody wants to hear about near death experiences, but 25 years ago, if you told your doctor after a surgery that you saw the light, they were going to kind of roll their eyes or worse. So I love that that these stories that this every one of them is so fun and funny very often. But the idea, Eric, is to get people to think, no matter what they appear to be looking at in the world right now, whether it looks chaotic, dismal, or the end, that there are forces operating, synchronicity, impossible coincidence that lets you know, or at least makes you think, maybe we're not alone after all. Maybe there are forces, angels. The course is very comfortable with the idea that we're guided by certainly the Holy Spirit, certainly Jesus, but talks about angels, talks about guidance. I every morning meditate right over there for about an hour. I do a practice that always involves course lesson, and usually Carol Howe. She recorded all 365 lessons, Eric, and they're wonderful. They're short, but what a way to start the day. So I listen to those. But I have what I've called a circle of 18. These are guides, there are ancestors, these are friends who have passed over who I know reached a certain level of understanding. Ken Wapnick is in the circle, so is Bill Thetford. They speak to me. Ken was Ken had a stutter and is also, if you listen to his videos, they're brilliant. They can seem kind of academic to people, professorial, and it turns some people off. I have to tell you, having known him a bit, he was one of the funniest people I've ever met. And as a writer, he was a brilliant writer. He would pun and do all kinds of fun things with language, and you'd be howling. But that's not necessarily appreciated. He never forgot to laugh, so he's always. I don't know if you saw the video, the pilgrimage tour I did. 50th. Did you see that? I don't know. Anyway, so the 50th celebration Saturday, and I did a pilgrimage tour in New York. Since all four people who brought the course to the world were New Yorkers, I did a pilgrimage tour of their homes, and I called, and I know he would have laughed a lot at that. In fact, he sat in my circle a couple of days ago. He said, "Don't ever call me a nerd again," which beautiful because he would have said that, but he didn't mean it. He would have been laughing. So he didn't take himself seriously. I'll tell you that.
Did do you have a great synchronicity story? Do you have something that defies?
Yeah, I do. I do.
You want to
I
share it?
really, I have so many, but this one's so recent. Okay. You can see a tattoo on my arm. It's the peace sign. Okay. So I've always liked the peace sign. I like what it represents. As actually, it developed, I won't tell the story, but it developed in 1958 as a logo for a nuclear disarmament conference. And that's a semaphore signals for the N, nuclear, and disarmament, the D. But I've always liked, and I contemplated I don't have any tattoos. I'm 69. I would never get a tattoo. And in terms of my own synchronicity, but I was really feeling I wanted to do it, and that it would be meaningful only to engage people. Guidance was, it's not for the ink, it's for the engagement. Conversations are a connection. So for me, Eric, it's my synchronicities need to come in three. Then for me, it's action time. So I had in my mind that I'm going to be open, look for signs, synchronicities, look for, pay attention, say, be aware. A good friend in England, had a brief hospital visit, and she knew I was contemplating this. And she sends me a photo of her nurse. and her nurse has exactly that tattoo, but on the other arm, exactly same size, looks just like it. And okay, I said, whoop, there's one. Then I was thinking a week later, like, if I have it and I don't like it, what do I do? And I'm walking on 19th Street in the city, and I promise you this, I'm thinking about that. I turn to the left, and there's a storefront there that says Removery, experts in tattoo removal. Okay, now I'm kind of freaking out. Okay, so then I decided to start asking some friends who have tattoos, who do you use? Where do you go? I had no idea what they cost. I didn't know if it was $1,000 or $10. So a friend who has a home in Pennsylvania, I started to tell. She goes, "Oh, don't say anything more. You've got to use Ryan." And so um, I said, "Well, tell him what I want and ask what it'll cost." She calls me the next day, right, Eric? And she said, "I spoke to Ryan, and he asked me who you are and you know why you want the peace sign." I said, "You're a writer. You wrote a book called Mystic In The Mews, and you're a student of the Course in Miracles." I've never met this guy. He's 38 years old. And he said, "Oh, that's funny. I'm a student of the Course in Miracles." Okay, there's my three. And I knew I was going to get the tattoo at that point. Fascinating and maybe a little upset. Fascinating. 38 years old. He has a little girl. I did say his name. I shouldn't have. But anyway, he told me during the tattoo application that he had just gotten his passport. And I said, "Oh, wow, that's cool. Where are you going to go?" I thought he was going to South America or Costa Rica or Mexico. And he says, "Kathmandu, Nepal." I said, "Really?" I said, "That's kind of an exotic first trip." And he goes, "Yeah, I've just been receiving guidance that I need to go to Kathmandu, Nepal." The following week, I'm going to leave a week from Sunday. And the following week, he calls and he goes, "Do you need a touch up? I'm going to come to the city." I said, "I don't think so. It looks okay to me. It's a little scabby." And he goes, "Oh, okay." He goes, "Oh, I was going to come in Thursday." On Friday, the woman who turned me on to this tattoo artist said, "You're not going to believe this, but Ryan died, 38 years old. They don't know why. He just died." And obviously, he was going to be leaving for Kathmandu a few days later. That week, the politics, I don't know if you know this, there was huge demonstrations in Nepal, in Kathmandu specifically. They burned down parliament. They forced the prime minister out, and no foreigners allowed in anyway. I am absolutely sure that this tattoo artist went to Kathmandu, but not by. I really believe that for whatever reason he was needed there. So that's my synchronicity story. But honestly, we could fill an entire hour with stories that defy all rational explanation, but they light you up because they're so not what we're looking at on the news. They make you go, maybe me, maybe I have a connection, maybe I can find a sign, maybe I can locate my or um, have a sense of what I can do to make a difference in my life, in my heart, that might emanate outwards.
I like how we can look back on the course of our lives and finally see, how things had to align so perfectly for us to be where we are now. And a lot of that, we think of synchronicities and we think of alignment as uh, perfectly not just aligned, but things that we like, things that have worked out, that these great magical experiences. But sometimes they are things that have brought us low. Uh, I think a lot of course students can tell stories of how it was those low points when the course came into their life, or when they buckle down on their study of the course, as you mentioned, your own dark night of the soul, when things finally began to uh, make sense. So those synchronistic events aren't always the shiniest, but they can be the most meaningful that we have in our lives for sure.
Yeah, I think it's great that you said that because it can be misunderstood. The idea that everything is going to be to my advantage eventually is a powerful one, but hard to remember when you're going through a really tough place. But we've talked about this. I've spoken about this. We don't know what anything means, and we don't know what we want David Hoffmeister and Carol talk about manifestation, a very big idea. There was a movie some years ago called The Secret, which was huge, and the books were huge, and everybody likes the idea of manifesting. According to Carol, I asked her about this because Oprah had a whole segment about manifesting. And she said, manifesting is a clown show. Why is anybody trying to manifest anything? Because what you think you want is not what you want, or you don't know what you want. So if I want, the Lamborghini and I get it, uh, look out, careful what you wish for, kind of thing. Unless I heard get a Lamborghini. And maybe the reason get a Lamborghini would be to drive to, some neighborhood in New York where there are a lot of kids who would see a Lamborghini and take every one of them for a ride. That would be a beautiful gesture of love, perhaps, but don't do it unless you hear it. I don't know how your own experience of listening and following is. Does that feel like a muscle that's getting stronger?
It does. I wanted to piggyback on what you said. Paul Purcell, an author in the 90s, 2000s, he wrote a book on wishing, the art, I think it was the art of wishing, Hawaiian shamanism. And he talked about what's not talked about, the dark side of wishing, that you might wish to live to be 120 years old, and you can maybe manifest that and make that happen. But the dark side is you live to be 120, but your last 40 years, you're bedridden and in pain. Or you wish for, a higher income, and it puts you in an uncomfortable position with taxes or uh, whatever.
Well,
So
people have a lot of money and they get more paranoid. They get more paranoid about, yeah. And, if you're not hearing it, don't bother. Wishing and wanting is all ego, because if you're wishing or wanting for anything, including good health or whatever, you are hoping for something external to you, and that's not where any of the change happens. Ken would say that that you're never hurt, that nothing ever happens to us, but he doesn't mean to the body. The body will go, um, but nothing has changed essentially in terms of who we are. Now, that's a really abstract idea, very hard to wrap your head around. When I've never had back pain in my life. For the last weeks, I've had back pain. I had COVID and then I got back pain. And boy, nothing distracts like pain. Ken talked about it all the time. The ego's best weapon, physical pain, because you can't think about much else. It's very hard to bring those moments to spirit. It's a great practice. In terms of practice, I want to say one thing because you asked a question earlier. I will get back to whatever, but in terms of what's happening now, people are like, "Oh my God, what a disaster!" If you're a course student, what better time to practice what the course says than right now? I mean, this is what we've been preparing for, isn't it? And that Ken would say, if you do nothing but be kind every day. There was the great Platonian quote: "Kind for everyone you meet is going through is fighting a hard battle." If you do nothing but be kind and you do it consistently and across the board, you can throw this book away because that's all. That's the whole story. They asked the Dalai Lama in an interview once, "Could you talk about your religion?" Everybody expects him to talk about Buddhism. He said, my religion is kindness. Now I just got chills saying it myself, but that's like so beautiful. There's a lot of words in the course, 1,600 pages. It boils down to one thing: love. Love. Was Saint Augustine, I think, said, "Love, and then do what you will. Love first. Say anything to anybody. You can do anything with anybody. Love, and then do what you will, or what you're guided to do." It's a great quote.
imagine where we would be politically and nationally and worldwide, if we took that to heart. And even, I think, even course students, as you mentioned, 35 years before you actually began to get it. Um, I'm along the same lines. I love the metaphysics of the course, but I'm often asked, what if you're wrong? What if you're wrong about all the metaphysics And I think, you know what? I'm okay with that because it's given me a life of kindness. It's given me the skill of forgiveness. It's given me really a peace that still got a lot of stuff going on in my life, a lot of issues, a lot of problems, but I have tools. The course doesn't mean that your life is going to be, this ever flowing miracle when nothing bad ever happens to you. We're still in bodies, but it does give you the skillful means of navigating those problems with a very peaceful heart, a very kind attitude, and a very forgiving nature.
Yeah, I mean, the course is it's probably the opposite. If you're really dedicated, unless you've come with a level of evol- evolvement, is that a word? That then you're going to hit those rough patches because again, we're here because we're in an ego. We're in a body because we have very loud ego. That's why we're here. If you weren't struggling to heal that piece, you wouldn't be here in a body. Ken would say, you wouldn't bother with this dimension or whatever you might say. But if we're serious about the course, we're going to hit rough patches for sure. And the course talks about it. There will come a time when the level of terror, I can't remember exactly what lesson it's in, but that you're going to confront a level of terror that is going to make you really wonder what you're doing. And the course talks about the fire that you go through. Joseph Campbell talked about the hero's journey, which touches on the same thing. The hero's journey sounds so cool, right?
Mm.
Become a Jedi Knight. You're going to have this incredible. You're going to slay the dragons. The hero's journey is about terror in some parts of it. Terror. We use that word. Oh, I'm terrified of mosquitoes, but then terror is a very uh, gut wrenching, bring you to the knees experience if you've gone through it. And if you say you're in terror, but you're going to come out of it and all's well, you're not in terror because I think a hallmark is it feels like the end. And you do not have to. I don't want to discourage people who are loving the course, but it is. It's not it's not a what do they call it? Love bomb. No, the word bliss ninny kind of experience. It's not. It's Ken says there comes a time in the course practice, could be 5 years, could be 10 years. First of all, he says you don't throw it against the wall a few times. Not my usual book, by the way. Um, my other book I can barely hold up because it's so dog-eared. If you don't throw the book against the wall a few times a month, you're not doing it right. But the other thing he says is that it is not even a course for young people. They probably should do it until your 30s or 40s even because you have to try everything in Goes arsenal, before you go, this isn't working, man. I do not feel, I try to not use the word happy, but I don't feel content. I don't feel at peace. I don't feel fulfilled. I don't feel uh, loving or I feel scared and I feel worried all the time and anxious, so um, it's a journey, and journeys have mountains, and journeys have boulder fields, and journeys have forests and swamps. It also has beautiful vistas.
Mm. So was it pain that first brought you to the course? Was it suffering?
Yeah, I had a therapist who Ken Wapnick referred me to, who would say that oh no, almost no one comes to therapy unless they're in a crisis. So and so many people go to AA and other healing paths because of crisis. I would say this. When I was so I had no sense. I had very overprotective parents, and I didn't have any sense of myself until I went to college, and then I had kind of a existential crisis where I kind of realized, wait a second, I'm a thing. I'm a thing, and Alan's a thing, and I have my own life, and I'll have to figure it out. And then it started with what the hell is going on? What is this loop de loop merry-go-round? What's the point? Why is everybody running to work and running back? They can have a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off, and then go back to what looks like everyone's miserable. So that's when the question started, and I just got really anxious and scared and lost. I had a father who was 61 when I was born, a much older dad, and I became obsessed with his death and my death, and that lasted for decades, where I was very, very freaked out about death. I don't feel the same way now. It's changed quite a bit, um, mercifully. But yeah, it was definitely sort of an ongoing crisis, Eric. And as I said, I tried everything. I went to church, I went to temple, I went to mosque, I tried every. I got all the books. I tried everybody's books and so many things that I thought might lead me out of my despair, at least tremendous confusion and a sense of being lost. Ken says everyone is in terror and everyone feels lost if you scratch below the surface, as he says. And it was certainly that. It probably didn't look like that, that blow that people can have with loss of a child or a divorce, or your job gets pulled out from under you. But it had this kind of rolling thunder. There was a lightning strike eventually. Yeah.
Well, for me, um, I was a student of books about the Course in Miracles for quite some time, for about 10 years. I loved the course. I just didn't want to practice it. Um, it was not, as you said, it was not fun. Um, and as soon as I hit the wall, as soon as um, an example, I've done some marathons and some ultra marathons, would be hitting the wall at mile 18. Um, I don't even think I made it to 18. And I said, you know what? Maybe I'll read a book about the course um, instead of doing the workbook lessons. So I read everything about the course. But it was only when I was really, and I mentioned to you in an email, when I was brought to my knees so much, converging, um, which you could think of in review as synchronistic moments. All the right people leaving, all the right people suffering, all the right people bringing their pain to me. Um, when I said enough, it's time. Throw the books about the course away. I, Oddly enough, it was disappearance of the universe that gave me that catalyst to say, okay, now it's time. I've read enough about the course. It's time to do the course. 10 years in the making. I picked up the course. Um, I first read about the course in the late '80s, and then, of course, in the early '90s, Marianne Williamson's book, and then host John Mundy. I've read all of his books, um, but it was not until the late '90s I bought the course, and it wasn't until 2007 when I, I buckled down and said, okay. Unfortunately, after 2007, I dusted off my hands and said, okay, now that I'm awakened, what do I do?
What'd you do? This podcast?
No, after 2007, I made the mistake of thinking I was done. You know, the turkey roaster button popped up and I was ready to go out into the world, a fully enlightened student of A Course in Miracles. And that lasted about a day, 2 days, when I realized that, got to dive back in, that it's a process forever unfolding. Um, Maybe not picking it up from day one to 365, uh, but not also maybe doing that as well. So each year it's been something, either going right back in or just using it, as David Hoffmeister said, he uses it as an oracle now.
Yeah.
We'll just open it up and it's always the right thing right in front of him.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, Ken would say that he and Gloria, his wife, would go touring around the country and the world, and people would say, I did the Course in Miracles, and they meant that they did the workbook, which is a great place to start, and they did it for a year, 365, and they're done. They did the course, and it's really important to look at the workbook, and it says this is the beginning, not the end. This is just the start. And then Ken often thinks that the best way to go is do the workbook, then read the text, which is heavy duty, and then the teacher's manual, which people don't really understand because they certainly I didn't anyway, that we're all teachers, we're all teaching each other, we're all in the same boat. There is no one who's like special. And so it's just the beginning. So yeah, I mean, it's just my way. I love to do a course lesson every day. I think I've done it probably 4 or 5 times before this. I've gone through for this I had a few years ago, but now I think I'm on the third year of going through it every day, and until I'm told that's enough now, I will, because it's very, very enriching to me. It's very uplifting. It is an absolute, it forms this wonderful foundation for starting the day. I write my lesson. I write my lesson every day on a post-it. I put it in my pocket, and I set the ACIM. There's an app that allows you to set a timer so that every half hour, you're reminded to do it, and it's very, very useful and helpful. And that's what I do. And I guess I would say that I feel I'm a beginner, and I'm not being facetious. I mean, when you start to have a felt sense of the course, now it starts, because the ego wants you to read it intellectually. It wanted me to dissect it. I mean, you're in good company with. I didn't want to do the course. I had no interest in whatever you said in the early days. I mean, famously said, Helen, who was the scribe for the course with Bill Thetford's help, she said, I, I know it's true, but I don't believe it, which is a really interesting quote. Really interesting. Wrap your head around that. She never practiced the course. She knew it, obviously, embodied it, and would say that she had the goddess nature came in. She obviously was ready to do it. But she didn't practice the course. She was a handful. I mean, the stories about how she didn't look like she was being kind. She actually, I love this, but somebody tried to turn her into the sage, or worship her. A woman came, and she was doing a talk, and one came and sat next to her and kind of genuflected, and Helen kicked her, which is, you know, it's like, not me. You got the wrong person here. Yeah. So yeah, you're in good company. We're all in good company. Road to the same.
I've often wondered why um, Bill Thetford embraced it towards the end of his life so wholeheartedly, um, practicing to the point where you said he was literally his last day he was dancing because he was free. Um, but Helen never did.
No, she always resisted, and she was very unhappy even to the last day of her life. Ken tells a story that when she did die and he was there, that she had a beatific, is that the right way? The beautiful smile on her face, because Jesus had told her that when she goes, he would be there to receive her. And Ken is convinced that's the look he saw on her face. Bill had a very rough beginning. He was 3 years ill and lying in bed as a child, but reading and reading and reading. Brilliant, brilliant guy, gay man, and had a lot of struggles. And then after he left Columbia University, where he worked with Helen, he went to California to Judy Skutch and Jerry Jampolsky and some other teachers. That's where Carol Howe met. And he did decide that there was nothing but the course to study. And the last day of his life was July 4th, Independence Day in America, July 4th, 1988. He was going to a picnic, Independence Day picnic at Judy Skutch's house. She said, "I'm going to the grocery store." He said, "I'm going to take a walk." He walked 50 feet out of her door and had this massive heart attack. And but he had told her literally minutes before, he was dancing in living room kitchen, and he said, "I'm free. I'm finally free." And she said, "Well, what about this relationship and that tension?" He goes, "No, I've healed them all. They're all done. Free. I'm finally liberated." And he dies on Independence Day. And there were famously, she lived on Bedminster Island out by San Francisco, and there were famously fireworks in the bay, on July. So people often talk about his celebration. He was celebrated that day. I know a few people that were at that picnic that day, or that celebration, and they said it was a celebration, it wasn't a funeral.
You could literally say the great work of his life was forgiveness.
He at the end at the end of his life, people would say, because he was so accomplished, he had such an incredible life, he contributed so much even beyond the course. And people would say to him, "So what are you doing now?" And he said, "I'm practicing forgiveness." And they wouldn't even know what he was talking about, but that's what he was doing at the end of his life, 100%. And that was what believed was his greatest achievement, his graduation. People say that Ken Wapnick and Bill were the first graduates of the course, the curriculum.
Do you now, you having met um, Kenneth Wapnick, do you believe that he graduated, that he was at that level, so to speak?
Yeah, I think that I will say this. I think that Ken was the most evolved human being that I ever met in the terms you're talking about, and Carol Howe is the most evolved female body, apparently. Yeah, and there's a woman who I adore now named Vicky Poppy. She's very involved in the course, but is not so much an active teacher. She's going to be doing a podcast in the fall, a call in. Her name is Vicky Poppy. She doesn't have a big online presence, but she is a walking oracle of love and generosity and kindness and fun. Her big thing is we've got the next 50 years. The course is 50 years old at the 50th anniversary. The next 50 years is about fun. And I had an experience that I will share because it really is an important one in my own evolution in terms of this work. When I had my darkest night in that time, where I really thought, I can't keep doing this. This is hell. I couldn't write. I couldn't think. I couldn't call friends. I was really crippled. Everything was tearing down, and I was in bed. And I had a vision. I think I was sort of in that half state between waking and sleeping, and there was a figure. I won't. I will. It was a male. And there was a figure up in the at the corner of my room, and with this level of ignorance, it said, "Are you ready to have fun yet?" Now I'm in the lowest place I can possibly be. I mean, I'm ready. I got a 14th floor balcony. I was thinking, like, how long would it take me to hit the pavement? And I remember thinking, what a horrible thing, what a cruel and unloving thing to hear at this moment. Are you ready to have fun yet? And then 2 days later, again, contemplating what next. Same thing, same voice, same level of enthusiasm and exuberance and sort of infectious delight. I had the same reaction, but I'll tell you now, I realized I never really did have fun my whole life. I was always a sort of a humorous guy, a playful guy, had fun with I did magic, stuff like that, but I never really had fun. I wrote another book besides the Peace and Quiet book, Eric, called New York's 50 Best Places to Take Children. And only in my 50s that, oh, wait, I wrote the Peace and Quiet book. They never felt peaceful. And I wrote the kids book because they never had fun. And so I'm having more fun at 69 than I've ever had in my life. I'm speaking, I was a creative director in an ad agency, so I was always presenting and I was always scared and I always thought, man, what a fraud I am. I don't know a thing about advertising. And yet I had my career in that. This is the only time in my life, I would be up for days before presentations, really scared and really convinced I was going to, the client would go, "You're a fraud. You don't know what you're talking about. We're pulling the count." And only now, I mean, 10 minutes before we got on, we had a little tech glitch. And, you know, this is what I want to talk about. It comes from a place that is, sort of at the core of my love and belief and conviction and hope. So it feels not difficult and not scary. And I love it. We talked about this before we got on. There's course teachers right now can understand, or people who are on any spiritual path understand this is our moment. And what a privilege.
It's funny, I reached out to you right when you were coming back from the celebration,
Yeah.
and you said you gave me such a warm, gracious yes. Give me a couple days to rest, and then the next thing I know, I get an email from you, and you quote Kenneth Wapnick saying, um, "So what was the quote? The best time." Uh,
Yeah, it's a great quote. There's plenty of time, but no time to waste. So let's get on it. Yeah.
exactly. And then he said, "How about Monday?" Um, and David Hoffmeister did the same thing with me. Um, our friend, she's in the chat right now, Miss Flipper. She comes up every Monday um, we do just Miracle Mondays with Miss Blipper, and we just talk whatever comes up in the course. And she had let me know that she couldn't make it one particular Monday. Um, and I think that was like on a Thursday. And I had sent out a message to David Hoffmeister, and I said, "Would you consider coming up?" And he sent me again just a gracious, beautiful email and said, "How about Monday at 1 o'clock?"
Yeah.
Which is the time that Miss Pepper couldn't make it.
Yeah.
Um,
The time.
just a just a synchronistic moment.
Yeah.
Um, just and again, everyone's been so warm and so enthusiastic about sharing the course. Just amazing. One thing I did want to ask you, I don't want to forget, your Dark Night of the Soul, and you had also mentioned the teacher's manual. So, are we talking about trust? That when we get to the characteristics of God's teachers, and they talk about the stages of trust, where it seems everything is being taken away, everything that you put your trust in before seems to be taken away from you. It's not really taken away because it was never really what you should have been trusting in to begin with. But is that what you describe your Dark Knight?
Well, yes, in terms of the trust thing, all those things that I used as mm, my identifying, you know, characteristics were meant nothing. It had nothing to do with who I really was. And the trust part, I think, I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to in the teacher's manual, but that would be that, it's okay if Spirit says jump off the cliff, there's going to be a net. You do it. I have a friend who I'm helping edit a book. He's an English fellow, a psychologist there, and he's just been getting a message that he has to give up everything, and he's terrified. As a man who's married with 4 children, and he is coming into an awareness now that is it's unlike the work he's doing now as a psychologist with therapy clients. And his message from Spirit was, in terms of he was trying to negotiate with Spirit about what level of how much compromise could he do with this, give up everything, and Spirit said, uh, take do the thing that is going to feel the scariest to you. Now that takes a level of trust. But if you aren't willing to do that, then ego is in there and saying, Eric, let's see if we can have. Ken would talk about this all the time. Everybody wants to have all of their ego treats and candy and spirit, but they don't. Is that great expression? You believe it when you see it, or see it when you believe it. That's a great demonstration. Like, am I serious about this? Do I trust Spirit to lead the way, and that I will always be taken care of, and not taken advantage of? That I'll sacrifice nothing, which is obviously big theme of the course. You sacrifice nothing, and you get everything. But that is not what the ego tells us. The ego tells us we're going to lose everything. We're going to be destitute. We're going to be without. Yeah, we're going to be without a job. I'm going to have to go to the corner and panhandle with my favorite guy down in the corner. Uh, but yeah, yes, I would say that doing the deep dive is all about trust. Actually, it's all about saying, I need to do nothing without spirit guidance. It's about asking for every question, not going, I really want pizza. No, not pizza today. I really want pizza. Now I want to, and then you have the pizza and you get a stomach ache. I want to say that Jesus says, Helen would ask Jesus where she get a nice coat, where she was fashionable, where she could get the right stockings, and he would tell her. But he'd say, this is not what it's about, but I'll help you here to decrease her fear so that she could do the work that she was agreed to do. But Ken would say, it's fine to ask for a parking space, but don't stop there. That's the key. That's the whole problem with manifesting. I manifested a parking space. Got a ticket at the opera. Bill Thetford famously he loved the opera, he loved theater, he loved tennis. He would go and just show up because he had full trust. He didn't have a ticket. Somebody would come up to him and said, "This is your ticket." Literally, somebody biked up to him at I think it was the opera, and said, "This is your ticket," and biked away free. But he didn't manipulate that. He didn't go, "Oh, I'm going to wish for a ticket." He just trusted fully. So Ken would say, "Do your manifest, but don't stop there. No, that's not the answer. It's fine to have, don't get a special. I don't the whole special relationship piece in the course, Eric, as you know, that's a big deal. But we use special as something good. The course special as not so good, because
Right.
the minute I attach to this glass, this is the glass I have to use every morning, Eric. And if I don't have this glass, I'm going to be unhappy. The hate begins there. Ken would say the minute, why relationships are so tough, the minute you decide that person is the key to my happiness, decide to fulfillment, to feeling worthy, to feeling loved, that's when the hate begins. Because on some level, they're going to leave, they're going to die, they could abandon me, they could meet somebody else. We're already plotting how we can, put the shackles around their ankles and keep them right here. It doesn't sound very loving because it's not.
We could flip that around too. That that special hate relationship. That this person is responsible for messing with my peace of mind. This person is responsible for making me feel this certain way. This person is responsible for whatever. Um, and it's that level of specialness that you just talked about.
Yeah, 100%. So Ken would always say, Wapnick, we're talking about again, he would always say, we spend every minute of every day looking out to find something or someone, the government, you know, the crime or whatever, looking outside for someone to blame for our unhappiness, for our discomfort, for our fear. And then we decide they're bad and we're good, we're righteous, they're demonic, they're with the devil. So we're spending every minute of every day looking out for somebody to blame for my despair, unhappiness, and that is exhausting. And it
Yes.
never works. I mean, we cast the blame on them, but actually in that moment our guilt level increases exponentially. The pain is on us. There's that great, was it Confucius who supposedly said, "If you seek the path of revenge, dig two graves." I mean, what a great line! He's like, you're gonna get whacked.
Both politics and social media are great for giving us those special hate relationships that you know but also what great tools, as you said earlier in the conversation, to bring it to us, to bring it to our awareness
Yeah.
that awesome, I get to forgive this. I get to forgive this person. I get to, those dark corners of the mind, as you mentioned, Kenneth Wapnick said, I get to shine some light on it. It's great that it's come to my awareness.
Well, I love the best about the course and the tools it gives us is that if you follow it, then you're no longer a line. It's a course, a workbook lesson. I am not a world I see. If you do this, where you can't blame anybody for anything, and everything that is happening out there is a projection of my own mind. Now I have all the power to heal my life, and not being a victim of the world I see can take you to a level of peace that most people never experience. It's so beautiful because now I'm empowering myself to be filled with love, be joyous. I'm not looking for someone to blame and deciding that if this, whatever, government doesn't change, I'm dead, or the country is going to, go into uh, complete destruction. I had a very, very loving friend. Um, I'll call him Dr. Joe, and he was 93, and it was back 20 years ago, and it looked like the end of the world. And I said to him, "Joe, he was in World War II. He actually was a Jew who actually was one of the people who liberated Buchenwald." And I said, "Joe, do you think this is the worst time in your life?" He was 93 at the time. And he said very cavalierly, he goes, "Alan, The world has been coming to an end since I'm a child. So, Ken Burns now doing a wonderful documentary about the Revolutionary War, and he's talking about that if you think this is the Civil War, the tearing apart of the country, look at your Revolutionary War history and your Civil War history. There have been times that are this dark. So, and I actually this is the beginning of the lightest period in all of our lives, no matter where you are. But you know, I'd have to defend that to some people, which I won't.
Right. You mind if we take a bit of time to see if anyone has some
Oh,
questions for you?
I would love that.
All right, guys, we're opening things up for questions, and anywhere from Course in Miracles to synchronicities to uh, surrender to trust to any of the many topics that we've covered. Let them have it. You know, I got to say hi to my cat real quick. I'm at that point in my life right now. I'm at that level of uh, trust or perish. In the publishing game, it's publish or perish. It feels to me like I'm at that trust or perish point in my life where, um, and things seem to be uh, being taken away. Um, and I've found myself wondering, and I've talked to many course teachers that have come up um, about, have you ever been hesitant in that level of trust to step fully into that point? And pretty much all of them said, well, yeah, of course. Of course, it's scary to be there, to have things taken from you
Yeah, I'm going to bring
or
my phone
seeming.
closer because I'm getting some glare. I cannot imagine anybody who's doing any spiritual path seriously, certainly the course, that doesn't wonder if I'm going nuts, if there's any point to this. Why did I waste 30 years of my life? All of those things. So I think it's a very common experience. It's probably part of the journey, and a very valid part, because it is, to me, it would be clearing another block of love present, going through those doubts. And the ego, again, every time, I mean, I've just gone through a really big expansion in terms of my writing and my work and my own spiritual practice. And within a month, I went to Holland for a beautiful conference. I came back. The minute I walked in my door, I got, again, in the time and space dimension, I got COVID and got sick. And then I got, they think I have Lyme disease. And
Oh,
so I
wow.
Lyme disease, and then I got pink eye. I mean, it was like a boom, boom, boom. But it was very interesting because for the first time in my life, I didn't get terrified. I really thought, oh, I get it. With the expansion comes there's a line that's so perfect. It says the ego will get suspicious, then vicious. So the ego got a little suspicious about what's going on with you, Eric, too, probably, and then it gets vicious. And that is the time to, in the Bible, it would be, Satan, get thee behind me. That is the time I am not taking this bait. And interestingly, pretty much everything that, the COVID could have lasted, right? COVID, Lyme could go on for years. Pink eye takes a week, or everything kind of just disappeared in a couple of days because I just wasn't biting on. And it doesn't mean we'll not get sick. It doesn't mean there isn't a lesson in it. It was a wonderful demonstration for me of, there's a couple lessons. I am not a body. I am free, for I am still as God created. I am under no law but God's. There's a story where, not necessarily well-known story, where a woman brought a dead infant to Jesus, and he took the infant in his hands and he just looked at it and he said, "Inconceivable," and the child. That's not the goal of the course or anything else, is to raise the dead, but was so trusting that this is impossible, inconceivable, that he was able to inject that kind of energy into this dimension. Uh, So I love that story, actually.
Um, I appreciate that uh, answer. So often I wonder, um, am I bringing people up on a live stream for they say one particular thing for a certain length of time, and it's exactly what I need to hear, and I wonder, is that the whole reason uh, that they so enthusiastically come up to give me that message that I needed to hear? Um, and I definitely needed to hear that. Our friend Manifester wants
I,
to know.
I just say, is that the reason they came on? I would say this: that is the reason that you handed them the script. You handed them the script, me, whoever, because you already knew the answer. You just needed to hear it back in your head. So
Right.
it's so you invited me for you. I agreed for me. Of
There you go.
course talks about it this way, same or Kenwood, same dream. We're having the same illusory dream, different point of view. Love that.
So, well, I get this feeling now that um, Ken is making a little bit of room in my imagination for you to slide in. Uh,
Yeah, he would do that.
um, Manifester wants to know how did you first publish a book, please?
How did I first publish a book?
Yep.
The first book I published was the Peace in New York's 50 Best Places to Find Peace and Quiet, and that came through incredible synchronistic thing. I actually self-published it as a guidebook, as like a handbook, because I thought, wow, am I the only one who's like freaking out in New York? So I self-published it, and I spent my last $1,500 at the time to do it. And about a month later, who knows how this happened? I get a call from the buyer at Barnes and Noble who says, "Are you Allan Ishac?" It was a little pink, a purple pamphlet, basically, but staple bound. And he said, "Are you Allan Ishac?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "I got this little book on my desk. I don't know where it came from, but everyone's picking it up and looking at it." He goes, "You can make it 50 places instead of 25, because it had to have a binding, so it goes on the racks. You can read the title." He said, I'll buy your entire inventory," and it was incredible. I thought I can't find 25 more, but I did, and I got an agent because I already had the deal, and a publisher called Avon, not Avon's Calling, but Avon Books, Hearst division, bought it, and really, it, there went to six editions. There was, it's as I said, I think it sold. It's about 190,000 copies, but
Well,
it happened in a weird way. I'm staring at the World Trade Center right now, 17 blocks away, and that's where I was on 9/11. And the public radio station in New York, WNYC, was doing its fundraiser around then, and they were having trouble finding an appropriate gift for the fundraiser. They chose my book at that time, and I was on with Brian Lair, who's the well-known, spokes radio personality there, and it really took off. So weird way, but I think it helped a lot of people. I want to believe that people still tell me, "Oh, I have that book still on my shelf." There's sort of no point because most of the places that aren't parks are closed. But it was an important. You said everything you do, you realize every brick in the house needed to be there. The dark times, the tough times, those preparations. I used to think advertising, man, why did I do that? Why did I write that? For this book, I had to read so much stuff from quantum physics to Jung's books to David Bohm's book to illusions. In the back of the book, I credit like 25 authors and their books. I spent 3 years reading, and the advertising gave me a skill. I want to answer your guest the question, but it gave me a skill to kind of read a lot of material and pull out what was easy to use. Like I'd read a client's manual about Panasonic Tough Book, and then I could find the key selling proposition. So I self-publish, and I'll just answer the caller's question. And it is very easy to do today. It's very difficult difficult to sell directly to a publisher if you haven't been published, because during the pandemic, everybody was home and I got a book to write. This is the book that I always been wanting to write. And publishers were bombarded with unsolicited manuscripts. What they all realized they could do is, like, so many people wanted to get published. They all offer now to help people self-publish. They charge a lot of money to do it. You'll get self-published because the industry is so scared about books that flop. They use that as a way of testing ideas and titles. So Eric writes a book. He gets it self-published through Random House's division, does self-published books. It sells 20, it has to sell 5,000 copies for them to even be interested. But Eric's book sells 50,000 copies. They contact Eric and go, Eric, we're going to absorb your book into our main list, into our trade list. And that's how they're using it as a way to test uh, different books. So it's money, and also a way for them to see if the market can bear a title or book. So very easy to get self-published. Feel you have an idea that must see the light of day. This never found a publisher through my agent, but I would not let it because of the ideas in it. But I didn't let it languish. I could not, and so I self-published it, and it's done very well, and it's opened many doors. I'm very happy to be writing the full trilogy. The Mystic has a lot more to say.
Um, Hopefully, you're going to add a few more sales after this conversation. Um,
Awesome.
yeah.
Actually, I hope I let me say this about that. It doesn't matter to me actually, but it's certainly nice to be read. I had a wonderful writing teacher named Bill Zinzer here in the city. He said, "I hate to write, love to have written," meaning I love to be read. But I feel so. Hmm. I didn't know when I was in that dark place if I would finish it, and I knew it's why I came in this lifetime. So the relief I feel over finishing it and having it received a lot of five-star reviews on Amazon and people enjoying it. And somebody called me and asked me if they loved the book, read it a couple times, would I be willing to walk around the village and take them to places in the book? There, I will say this, that there are two locations in the book, primary locations: Greenwich Village, New York, and Carmel, California. Because the ideas were so, by the way, the Mystic, I didn't even say this, is based on the Course in Miracles. Course in Miracles students will recognize actual course language that comes out of the Mystic's mouth. If you're not a course student, you would never know it. But it's based on my study of the course. And so um, yeah, so he wanted to go around and go to locations. But I chose Carmel because I have a friend in Carmel, and I would go every year to be with her and her family. So I knew Carmel well. I know the village well, but I couldn't get complicated with the locations because it would be too much for me to research the locations and really develop the concepts and the messages of the book. And I've written a bunch of fiction books, but not fiction. Dialogue was so intimidating to me. It's very scary. I think I wrote good dialogue, Eric, and then you read it out loud, like, what the hell? That is so wooden. No one would speak like that. It took me a long time to get what I think the dialogue is right. There's let's see, there's six main characters from a 9-year-old to a 75-year-old, and everyone has a different voice. So it's tricky.
Cat and Jack says, did you always know your guides, or did it come about because of A Course in Miracles?
What's the name of the caller?
Cat and Jack.
Thank you so much. So I have a circle of 18 who I sit with every morning. I did not know this, but a Jewish friend said that 18 is sort of the magic number in Judaism, and that when you give gifts, important dates like bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs, you give in multiples of 18. I also live in a place, and I love firemen, and I love our firehouse locally, and I bought their T-shirts, and it's Squad 18, and I didn't even realize it until like a few months ago. A friend said, "Oh, you wearing that Squad 18 shirt because it's your A Circle of 18, Squad 18?" God, I never even realized that. And what do firemen do? Put out fires. They put out emergencies, which is what my Circle of 18. So it started with a few, to answer your caller's question. And it developed over time where I realized, oh, Renee Saltoun, a family friend who was the first person who mentioned the course to me in 1979, actually, so only 3 years after it was published, 4 years after it was published, she's in my circle. And each person that's in my circle, each entity, each ancestor can speak to a certain thing that's going on in my life. Now, the Holy Spirit, I'm looking because I literally know where they all sit. But the Holy Spirit is in my circle. Jesus is in my circle. Empedocles, who's the mystic in my novel, is a teacher of mine. Ken is there, Bill is there, and some other folks that you wouldn't know. But my ancestors are all there, and or key ancestors who are helping me. And again, I want to say again, uh, you know, Ken would say something funny. Like, we think that people who die are more evolved than we are, so we pray to grandma or whatever. And grandma doesn't have a body, so she might be able to at least come from that point of view. But she doesn't necessarily have more awareness than you do or I do. You know? But these, I'm pretty sure the ones that are in my circle can speak to the pieces that I bring with them from a level of understanding that works for me, and I won't stop there.
So they were. Do you think studying the course? Do you think they would have been there without the course? And maybe no.
Oh, that was the question. Yeah, no, absolutely not. I mean, the whole idea of calling on spirit came from my study of the course. Now, I had heard a lot about that. I didn't come to the course until I was like, what would it have been? I'm 69. Do the math, somebody. Anyway, yeah, like 35, 30, 30, no, 29. Okay. So that's when I came to the course. But from age 18 till 29, I was looking for something, but I really just wanted a panacea. You know, I'd follow gurus around because I wanted them to do the work. I wanted them to take care of me. I wanted them to heal me. I wanted them to give me their peace of mind. That never works. You know, it never works to become a disciple. I mean, it can be helpful to have a teacher. I'm not talking about that. Teachers are nice, but in the end, a good teacher, as Ken always says, is preparing to let their students go. That's what if you're a good teacher, your student doesn't need you anymore. That's the whole idea of it.
Miss Flipper wants to know, how will you describe your book in less than 25 words?
That's a wonderful challenge.
Yep, I'm not going to count. So if you happen to be 26, 27, that's okay.
I'm going to go for 27. A mystic comes to the world after 2,600 years to wake up the world and finish what he started in his first life in Greece 500, 600 years before Jesus. And he starts here in New York, and then it spreads around the world. Something like that.
That was very nice. Did you actually count when you were?
No.
Neither did I. Let's see.
Thank you for those questions. I
Uh,
need a better elevator. I'm going to work on that now.
Manifesto says, can I let you know that he was born in the country of Avalon, which is one of our sacred rivers in England, and in Welsh, Afron means river. He was the one who pointed out.
Avalon means, is that what he said? Avalon means river? Yeah.
Yep. Sniper says it was exactly 25 words.
Wow. Thank you.
Sab the Seeker says Alan Watts quotes that very well. A good tutor doesn't want people around all the time. His job is to lift you higher and move you on.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Oh, Avon, not Avalon, Avon. Gotcha. Miss Pippa says, excellent, thanks. Sissy Soul Stars production. Very impressed that you did that in 25 words, by the way, without counting.
Me too.
Oh, Avon. Avon was the publisher he was talking about.
Yes, Avon, which doesn't exist anymore.
I self-published a couple books. iUniverse.com, which is an affiliate of Barnes & Noble.
Correct.
And this was back in, I wrote it in 1999 as an intuitive, and actually in the acknowledgments. I mentioned Course in Miracles.
Oh, no.
That I sent you about how I quit drinking in
Yes.
'99. When I really can't rightly say that I quit drinking. Drinking left my life in a very synchronistic and magical moment. People have asked me, "Was it hard for you to quit drinking?" And I said, "No, because I never tried." I was
That note, it was just like last drink, bump, done.
I was an unhappy, happy drunk, if that makes sense. I was setting my fate that I was basically going to drink myself to death, um, and I may as well have fun while I'm doing it. Although it wasn't fun at all, but I could kid myself.
Yeah.
So I never tried to quit drinking. But I had uh, my copy of A Course in Miracles, and I had meditation and yoga that I had been practicing quite seriously. All of that was working without me even knowing that it was working. And in a synchronistic moment of an off-duty state trooper, and um, less than a mile from my house, and barely swerving, just enough where the trooper thought maybe I should pull him over just to be on the safe side. And I saw that flashing light, and I saw my path that I was going to continue this way, but it was going to be a very short with a tragic ending, or I had the unknown wide open, and all I had to do was say yes. And when the officer asked me to put my window down, and he said, "Sir, have you been drinking?" And I said, "Yes, but I'm not ever again. I'm done." Um, I talked to him later that night because he actually um, waited. And after I was processed, he gave me a ride back to my house. And he said, "I believe you."
Wow.
And I never had a drink again. Um,
Great story.
one day I was meditating. And when I was done, I thought, "So what now? What do I do?" And I, I looked in the mirror and I heard an intuitive voice say, "Be God's hero," which I didn't know what that meant. But I sat down and I wrote uh, an intuitive poem, "Does God Have a Hero?" And then I wrote an essay for each stanza. And I shared it with a few friends. They said, "You should publish it." So I did.
That was the book.
That was the book.
It was a long poem.
Long poem with, little essays on how I incorporated that stanza as my life path. Basically, it's a book on being kind. That when you're kind, when you practice forgiveness, you're God's hero.
I was just going to ask you, so does God have a hero? I think that's exactly right. We're all God's heroes when we listen and follow. Because we're one. We've never left. God is such a hard. I tried not to use the word God or love in my book because it's so they're so misused and misunderstood and used to hurt people. So there's that funny thing where God backwards dog, which really gets confusing. But yeah, it's I hope that love is a great way to, but even love is so hard. Anyway, yeah, I love the idea of your book, and I love the genesis of it.
Thank you. Squirrel Sniper wants to know, Alan, have you heard of the BOCK saga root language?
I've never heard of it. Tell me.
Um, if you ever have on a Wednesday evening, Squirrel Sniper comes up and he talks. Uh, we do the esoteric lounge. Squirrel Sniper talks all things esoteric, uh, and I mainly sit there with my mouth open.
So
Uh,
tell me more about that, Eric. You'll tell me more about that.
I don't know much about it, but
You'll tell me about the Wednesday gathering.
no, I will. I will for sure. Miss Flipper has another question. If you met Jesus today, what might you ask him? I think he might be in that 18.
Well, it's so funny because I did this pilgrimage tour and everybody says, "Oh, Jesus, he could do his thing in Galilee, but not modern city, whatever." I said he'd love it here. He'd be a natural. He gave the course to 4 New Yorkers, so I think he would have done great. But I think sitting with him would be enough, literally just sitting. But I think his message would not be any different, and any question that you ask of the course, and I suspect any question you ask of a Jesus or a mystic or a Krishna or a Buddha is going to be exactly the same. It's pretty much what you just said. Be kind. There's nothing but love. All we are. If you're practicing or doing anything that doesn't have that vibration, you're doing nothing. You're literally doing nothing, because everything we have two choices in everything we do, and it's so easy to recognize this. The course says there are two choices: love or fear. And everything we do, it's very easy to go, was that love or fear? We know right away. We really know right away. We might deny it. We might say, yeah, I slapped my kid, but they touched the stove, so I had to, that was love. Okay, well, think about it again. As Ken said, scratch below the surface there. So yeah, I think that I would love to see him again, but he didn't go anywhere, as Ken would always say. Oh, what's the problem? He didn't go anywhere. I love what you said about having conversations with Ken. I have no doubt about it, and I don't think it's a fantasy. I think he's here. When you're at that level of awareness, there's one. There's a whole scene in my book where the protagonist asks the mystic, who's Cleese. Empedocles was a real historical character. This is Cleese. Says, "Can you be more than one more than two places at once?" And he says, "Can't you?" And he explains why. But when you're at that level of awareness, there is no two places. There is no world. And my consciousness can be everywhere at once, and so can yours, and so can your callers, and so can all of us. But you have to know that. You have to.
Um, I'm sure you're probably familiar with Napoleon Hill.
I am.
He had I forget what he called it, a group. I think it might have been 13 people. Um, that he
Lucky
would,
13. Oh, nice.
yeah, it was his counsel that he turned for wisdom. And it became, I think he disbanded it because it became too real for him. And he got a little scared. Um, but it makes me wonder sometimes, had he not gotten scared, um, how much further um, maybe it wouldn't have been Think and Grow Rich. Maybe it would have been Think and Know Yourself as Holy, um, had he kept with that counsel.
Wow, I didn't know that story. I'd love to know where he backed off. I had this therapist, I'll tell the story very quickly, but she told me once, because I was very interested in this, what we're talking about today. And she told me very offhand, she was an Orthodox Jew, and she said that she was talking to a good friend of hers on the telephone. This is back in the 70s, probably. And she said that suddenly, this is an audio call, call only, there's video, and she said she could see through his eyes, and that she could see that he had the New York Times on the desk next to him, and she could read it. And she told him, Your newspaper open to this page, the headline, blah blah blah." And he said yes, and she was like, "What is happening?" A few weeks later, he called her. They called again, and he could see the same thing through her eyes. What she was reading, what's in her room, was that book over there. And I mean, I was like, "Oh my God, this is so cool! How did you use it? What did you do?" She goes, "I stopped after that. I didn't like it. Scared, and I didn't. We didn't pursue it. We didn't do it again. It never happened again. She turned it off. But to me, ooh, wow, that is so cool. I pursued it for years. I was like, I saw her for a long time. And I would always ask her, "So what was this about? Why didn't you pursue it?" I put the answer in this book because one of the protagonists is like, she's the cynic in the book. She's the doubter, and everybody loves her favorite character. But we all have the doubt. But this woman said to me, this therapist said to me, I think the truth is, after digging for years, is that it was so awesome and so amazing, and opened so many doors, that I was too scared that if it ended, I would be heartbroken, and so I stopped it. And that strikes me, your Napoleon Hill story strikes me, is because your addendum was maybe it could have led him to
Right.
remarkable, and he couldn't do it because it was too scary. If my deceased father, walked in the door, would I be excited or would I be scared? To be honest, right now, I'd probably be a little scared. Uh, so that's not going to happen. Maybe it in my dream, something like that. But the idea of these gifts, these parlor tricks, not the again. don't stop there. I mean, that's not what it's about, but it does, I think for me, it lets me know that what I'm looking at is not the whole story. And that is a really important thing to hold on to right now in my point of view.
Think and Grow Rich was a great catalyst book for so many people. But, again, had he not reached that point where he felt he had to disband, um, who knows? Who knows what
Great story. That's really interesting. Wow. Yeah. Wow.
um so to wrap things up, here's a question that I've asked a lot of people. If you had somewhere in the course a, let's call it a get out of jail card, um, the thing that you pull out in times of emergencies, the things that you pull out in your darkest moments, the a quote or a section or a lesson that just does it for you.
Yes, I talk about this a lot, actually. Let me see if I can find it. I think it's the epilogue of the workbook. It's a little long to read, probably, but I'll just read it. This
You
course
can
is
read as much as you want.
okay. It's so beautiful. I'll see if I can. And this is what I turn to. This course is a beginning, not end. The epilogue for the work. Your friend goes with it, capital F. That'd be Spirit or Jesus. You are not alone. No one who calls on Him can call in vain. Whatever troubles you, be certain that He has the answer. Trust, and will gladly give it. Simply turn to Him and ask it of Him. He will not withhold all answers you need for anything that seems to trouble you. He knows the way to solve all problems and resolve all doubts. His certainty is yours. You need but ask it of Him, and it will be given you. It goes on, like that, but I'll read the last paragraph. We trust our way to Him and say, Amen. Amen is just, I agree. In peace, we will continue in His way and trust all things to Him. In confidence, we wait His answer and we ask His will in everything we do. He loves God's Son as we would love Him, and He teaches us how to behold Him through His eyes and love Him as you. And this is the part that gives me chills and is right now. You do not walk alone. God's angels hover near and all about. His love surrounds you, and of this be sure that I will never leave you comfortless. I mean, that is so beautiful to me.
It is, and reassuring. I could see why you would go to that. If you don't mind, don't put the book aside just yet, because our friend Sissy wanted to know, would you be willing to scry the book for a message to me? Just as an
What
oracle, just
can
scry SCRY, which basically just open the book and whatever message is the message
Well, I
for.
can turn to it, but I will tell her right away that when I was in my darkest place, there was a lesson that I read repeatedly, and I'm not one of the people that knows the book, line and verse, but oh my God, I swear to God, I just turned to it. Wow. Okay, it's lesson 109. It's I rest in God. Read that when you're having a hard time. Like the epilogue, it just gave me one little ounce of belief or comfort or rest or solace. Things were really rough. It's lesson 101. I rest in God.
Beautiful. Um, one of the ones that I turn to, I won't read the whole thing either. Lesson 122, forgiveness offers everything that I want.
Yeah.
A lifelong search for enlightenment, reading autobiography of a yogi when I was pretty young and thinking, that's what I want. I want enlightenment. That's why I started yoga. Um, all of that left when I read lesson 122.
Mm,
Forgiveness offers everything that I want,
mm.
because it described this peaceful, this serene, uh, you know, just the beginning. What could you want? Forgiveness cannot give. Do you want peace? Forgiveness offers it. Do you want happiness, a quiet mind, a certainty of purpose, and a sense of worth and beauty that transcends the world? Do you want care and safety and the warmth of shore protection always? Do you want a quietness that cannot be disturbed, a gentleness that can never be hurt, a deep abiding comfort, and a rest so perfect it can never be upset? And when I read that whole search for enlightenment left, and I thought
Wow.
that's what I want. And forgiveness gives it to you. I don't need to. I still love to meditate. And I still have my breath work practice, my yoga practice. but my yoga is forgiveness.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, thank you for reading that. Reminded me of it. You ask great questions. Make it easy.
This, you know what? I'm going to make a prediction. I actually think that this might be the most rewatched, it will be the most rewatched of the conversations that I had, because it's jam packed with gems that I think people could just pull out and say, "That's what I needed to hear," and then come back the next day and hear something different and say, "No, that's what I needed to hear," uh, and I could see that
Well,
going.
the other alternative is ask me again. I'll be back.
Would you come back?
Absolutely. The same answer. How about next Monday? Not really.
Absolutely awesome.
Absolutely, Erica. Anytime.
Um,
Please. This is so much fun.
Open door.
And I love the question. You know what's interesting? So many, when I do these, almost everyone asks me about publishing, which always strikes me. Oh, but so many people, to your point about where we're at right now, so many people have something to say right now. And, they're not necessarily writing a book about crocheting. It's about this heartfelt journey. And yeah, please write, write. Somebody, a writer instructor years ago said, writers are the keeper of history, but we're the keeper of the heart.
Hmm. Have you read A Course in Love?
Yeah, I know a lot about it. Glenn Hoveman, the publisher, is a friend, and maybe publishing a book of mine. I have it right there. I've read it, and I think it's a beautiful piece of work. This is my path. I will hopefully toss it aside at some point, but I don't really look. People go, oh, you must read a lot as a novelist and all that. This is the book I read, and almost nothing. So that's what I read. I don't read the newspaper. I don't read news or anything like that. So if it's not course related, Course in Miracles related, I probably don't look at it. I don't think it's been improved upon, but it might. I don't know. Yeah, people love the Course in Love. I was at a conference. It was all Course in Love people, 50 people. Seems like we were talking about the same thing, Eric.
Right. I like you mentioned the one line that this is a course from the head to the heart, um, and which makes me. I have Course in Love there, and I sort of skimmed through it. I've never read it from beginning to end, um, but I agree. The Course in Miracles, it will take you from. It'll take you to the heart. It's a complete path in and of itself. I don't think it needs an add-on. I'm not against. Maybe it's the perfect book for someone, and I would never say that it isn't. But I agree. I don't think the course needs a add-on, and if it does, you have the manual for teachers, and you have psychotherapy, and you have um, the Song of Prayer, which I just read. And it's funny. It took me 30 years to get to a manual for teachers because it felt presumptuous of me to um, even after going through the workbook and the text several times. I thought I'm not I'm not ready to say that I'm a teacher of God.
Yeah, well, that's
Um,
where confusion comes in. Is that
I don't know if we accidentally lost Alan. Let's see if he can pop back up. Alan, if you're
I
looking, if
am?
you want to, he's still here.
Yeah, I was
There we
trying
go.
to turn off an alarm clock and I got rid of you. And tell me the question again. I got spaced out because I got scared.
Um, manual for teacher, and
Yeah. Okay. So so we're all teachers, and that was the ego telling you you're not ready and you shouldn't be teaching and you don't know what you're talking about. But again, I would say my daily practice is to go out into this incredible city, which I love, and there are 50 people outside the door that can use a smile or a hug or a hello or a greeting or just as you pass them, if it doesn't feel right to say hello based on what guidance I'm getting, is just think about them and sending, sending a little kiss of love, vibrationally. I think that to understand that we're all teachers for everyone, and that, anybody, Lisa Natoli, who was here, a great teacher, David Hoffman, now they're getting as much as we're getting, because there's no difference. There's no order of difficulty in miracles, and there's no hierarchy of hierarchy of illusions. So everybody's just doing the same thing all the time. And I am telling you for sure, this this wonderful show that you have is your teaching, and it's beautiful. I mean, I hope that you'll let me send you some wonderful teachers, Eric, that could be guests on your show, and we'll raise their hands immediately as well.
Um, I was going to ask if you knew anyone who wanted to come by, and before I asked, you said, I really
Yeah.
appreciate
Who
that.
do you who do you want? I mean, if you like Carol Howe on, she's just ready, anytime. And Corrine Zucco was here. Lisa Natoli was here on Saturday. John Mundy was here. I mean, wonderful teacher. Maybe you've had them
Um,
all.
I have not, but can I just say yes? Now, Corrine said I did send a note to her, and she said yes. So I'm waiting to hear time wise.
Yeah, she's really
Um,
busy, but she is a wonderful kid.
um, and I would just say yes to everyone. And literally, uh, if someone picked up the Course Miracles today and said, "Hey, can I come up and talk about A Course in Miracles?" I would say yes, yes, for sure. I just want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Um, I've had some yogi friends and some mystics come up. The funny thing, all of them have a little bit of connection to A Course in Miracles as well. Uh, and that wasn't the reason why I brought them up, but it just made its way in the conversation. And it's just amazing to see um, how it has touched so many people, even in ways uh, that maybe they didn't realize until now.
Yeah, I think, there's 4.5 million books, 4 million books out in the world, but I would say each book has touched 25 people or whatever. There's a lot of awareness of it. I think, certainly Marion. A lot of people think Marianne Williamson wrote the Course in Miracles, and of course her
Right.
presidential run made twice, I guess, made people more aware, and Glenn Gary's book brought a ton of people to the course, and John, I did this thing where John Denver wrote a song with course lyrics in it. He was a big, there are I mean, Deepak is a student of the course. Eckhart Tolle, based
Right.
the whole teaching on the course. Eckhart, The Power of Now sold 42 million copies or 40 million copies or something. So, Oprah knows about the course because she's deeply into Eckhart's teaching.
Our friend Percolated Fish says that he listens to Carol Howell every day. I like her voice.
Yes, and she's another one who's just got a smile in her voice the whole time while she's talking, and you feel it. Yeah, her voice is beautiful. You might, I just will say that Carol, about 4 years ago, she recorded the entire text, and it's beautiful. When I listen to it, I always start crying because she gets choked up over certain sections of the course. So yeah, you could look into that as well. Her the way she just cuts through all the baloney and resistance, and shares the daily lesson, and explains it so much in regular language, is super helpful to me. And I speak to her once a week, and I still listen to her like a devotee. So
What amazes me, uh, I mean, she's one of the original students. I mean, she goes way back. And you are
1979, yeah.
79, and you were a student since 86. And this is, what I brought the conversation in. This is what I told Kat um, when I was talking about talking to you. And I said the overriding theme that I keep coming back to is this wide open yes that these course teachers, students have, where their their enthusiasm um, is just, to me, it's a um, I have a friend, James Plath, um, wrote a wonderful book um, called The Gospel of Astonishment. And I love that title.
Yeah, me too.
And he has a YouTube channel, a podcast, The Advanced Institute of Astonishment. And he's a course student as well. But he talks about that wide open yes to life, that
Yeah.
proceeding through life with this level of astonishment of just wow, that I exist. And that to me, that's what the course brings so beautifully is um
Well,
so
anybody, any spiritual path, whether you're a yogi or a Course in Miracles student, I will say this: if not now, when? What have you been? What have you been studying? If not now, when? I like step up, write your books. Uh, ask, and then act. Love and then do what you will, but do it. And that's not flat. I don't want people to flagellate themselves, but I think there's plenty of time, but no time to waste. Let's do this. What fun! It's so
right.
fun. I mean, to talk about this is so fun. And Carol, Howe, boy, you talk about somebody who just raises their hand. Yes, before you get the question out, Carol, could I invite you? Yeah, sure. When is it? It's like, okay. So yeah, and I do think that's true of it. There is nothing else to do, as Ken would say too a lot. There is nothing else to do. You don't have anything more important to do.
You know, I gotta admit, I still get a little nervous doing this and talking to uh course teachers, course students. Am I gonna have anything to say? And now, and I was nervous with you coming up. Now, almost 2 hours later, I I think, you know, wow, so much more to say, because it just flows so beautifully.
Eric,
Um,
Eric, you are so kind. You are so considerate of your guests. You ask great questions. You also do something that's very difficult to do. You step back, and that's hard to do. I mean, a lot of people that have these shows want to be the show, you're an excellent interviewer.
Thank you so much. I can't tell you how much, um, not confidence, excuse me, but um, I felt like you just pointed me uh, to where I was and where I needed to be and why I'm here. Uh, and I needed to hear it. I very much appreciate it.
Well, can I say something that might sound a little funny, but I love you.
Oh,
I,
doesn't sound funny at all.
I think you're awesome. I mean it. And I would love to come back. And I really appreciate taking questions. This is so much fun, and I can feel my own energy lift up. I did a podcast recently. I had the same feelings. Like I had COVID. That's right. I was in the middle of feeling shitty. Whatever. I wasn't feeling good, and I told the interviewer, I can do an hour. I was on for 2 hours, and I never. Carol Howe says, when you're in your service, you're in your function, it just goes away. Any of those ancillary distractions, it just goes away. And so if you're feeling lousy, she says, go out and help somebody. Everyone needs help right now. Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting hard. And there's no question about that. So yeah.
If you don't mind, I'm going to keep you for 2 minutes so I can literally say, yeah, 2 hours just flew by. We're at one
So
hour
much
and
so
50.
that my phone is telling me I have no more juice left. Which is because I unplugged it so I could have a better angle. But yeah, I feel the same way. It flew by. When you said
Miss
2 hours, I looked at the clock because I thought it was the first hour.
Sissy, Soul Stars Production says, well, we love you, Alan. Ready for episode 2 already.
I love you. Let's do it.
Um, so whenever.
Yeah.
What do
No,
you have
yeah, go ahead.
work wise? How's your book coming?
The book is doing well. I mean, it sells more each month than it did before. When you're self-published, it's hard to get promotion. That's the nice thing about getting a publisher, is you get distribution. And you get some yeah, I mean, you get distribution. A lot of publishers don't do publicity anymore. They want, yeah, this is a crazy thing. And I don't mean it as discouragement, but publishers won't look at anybody now who doesn't have 50,000 social media followers, which is like, ugh. But, they're doing a lot of great work. But I am working on the Mystic book, on Carol's biography, on the show I told you about, Saint Dare to Share. And I mean, I just couldn't be more lit up. That great feeling when you don't want to go to bed and you can't wait to leap out of bed. That is a wonderful feeling.
It is. One last thing I'm going to add in. Um, I don't like saying someone looks fantastic for their age because it sort of sounds, well, for your age, you look great. So I'm going to get rid of that for. You look fantastic, and I can't believe you're 69 years old.
Yeah, I'll be 70 in June. Well, I'm going to tell you the truth. I have not, this is the youngest I felt, and that's the truth. My body is doing pretty well. I try to fit, but I will tell you this work, it just, it's the work. The work. I don't know. My father was 99 when he died. My mother was 93 in the time and space illusion. I have good genes, but I don't think it's that actually. I think it's being enjoy. I do. It's a it's an energy that keeps. I'm also very curious. People say what keeps you young. I always say curiosity. I am super curious about people. I love asking questions. All my life I've gotten, are you a lawyer? It's I have to be careful because some people do not want that kind of forward thing that I do, but I'm just super curious about people, and it's genuine, and boy, curiosity. Look at a kid. Look at what kid that's constantly why.
Right.
I want to know too. I want to know everything.
Um, I can't tell you how happy that made me feel. You mentioned that your father was 61 when you were born, that you had um, those wonderful years from 61 to 99 with your father. Uh, it just filled my heart with a whole lot of warmth and joy to hear that.
Yeah, we better talk about in episode 2. It was not a My father terrorized my siblings, but my relationship now with him, died in 95. It's amazing, and I will tell you stories when we talk again. So we must. He visited in an unassailable way, unassailable. I mean, there's no question. He shared something with me through a medium that no one else on the planet knew but me and him. He showed up and he told me, I get teary. He said, yeah, he said, I am so sorry and I'll do anything to help you now. And he has.
Oh, wow. Well, um, I love that we have a theme for episode 2.
I'm going to do it. If you want to do it before Christmas, we can, whenever I don't know how tight your schedule is, but we'll do it again.
Okay. Well, here's the thing. If I'm anything in life, I'm consistent. I do a live stream 3 times a day, every single day. I've
Wow.
had over 2,000 some live streams in a row without missing a day.
Wow.
Um,
God bless.
5 8 5 a.m. in the morning, 1 p.m. in the afternoon,
Where are you at?
and
Florida?
5:25. I'm in Maryland, just south of you.
Oh, because I saw Palm Beach. I thought maybe you're in Florida. Yeah.
Um,
I,
in the 5 a.m., I just talk for half an hour before I go out for my walk or my run about A Course in Miracles and whatever pops up. And then 1 and 5, if I have a guest or if I have one of my regular friends and they have topics that they'd like to talk about, we bring them up. Um,
well, what might be interesting, because I have no idea how it works after we hang up, but maybe if you get questions of some theme that seems consistent, we'll focus on that. I don't care what it is. A lot of
sure.
people hear about, now about this seeming situation in our country or whatever, and I love to talk about that. Carol Howe shared so much wisdom with me around that. I think it's very, it's very comforting.
Emily Perry is coming up on Friday.
Oh, Emily and I just texted this morning. We're going to be speaking ourselves on November 7th. She's
Oh, yeah.
kicks ass. She did a thing on the watch party in New York held here in the apartment, and she did a beautiful poem. Ask her that what she wrote for the 50th anniversary.
I
She's
will.
awesome. So is Robert.
And she's very socially engaged. Um,
Yeah, she is.
so that's one of the things that we're going to talk about is that, she's had several great podcasts where she talked, does the Course expect us to save the world? And it's a unique perspective about it. So I'm looking forward to seeing
I'm
that.
sure the answer she gave was no, but we save ourselves. But I will say this, that she and Robert have done some amazing work. She's a great speaker. She's just radiant. Uh, and please let me know when she's going to be on because I'm going to listen.
Um, This Friday coming up,
I'm going to listen.
1 p.m.
Huh?
And she said the
She's
amazing
in,
thing.
she's in
What's
England. Yeah. So 1 o'clock.
the amazing thing was she said she's very tight schedule. She started out the email, very tight schedule, a lot going on. Uh, if it's okay with you, would an hour work? And I thought, what a gracious, beautiful thing to say, that she's so busy, but I'd love to give you an hour. And I thought, amazing, absolutely,
Well,
an
give
hour with you.
her an hour. Eric, I honestly think my phone is going to die, and I don't want to cut off before saying goodbye to your guests and your listeners and everything. It says it's going to die, so I
All
should.
right, let's wrap it up. Allan, thank you again so much, my friend.
Yeah, really, brother. Let's just keep doing this. Thank you so much for what you're doing with these shows. It's amazing.
I appreciate that.
All right, we'll talk soon. All right.
Yeah, take care, my friend.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.